Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah ma ba'd. Over the last year or so, more than a year now, people have been constantly asking about the issue concerning Gaza and the Muslims there. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He facilitates for them in their affairs and brings about justice after years of oppression. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them stability in their iman and in their dunya. But because of what's happening recently with the current American president, Donald Trump, saying that he wants to take Gaza for himself or annex it for himself, people have been asking, and people are confused. What's the approach of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah? The Muslim rulers have spoken out. Where do we stand? What are the ulama saying? Now, I haven't found anything recent in reaction to what he has said, but we have some underlying and ongoing and established principles in the religion. So Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan has asked a number of questions. That's all I'm going to share, not to make it long, but there's a couple of things that we have to understand. This question, the question is asking, هل الرجوع إلى العلماء, is returning the affairs back to the ulama أصل من أصول أهل السنة والجماعة? Is this a part of our manhaj? Or do we go to anyone that we feel like?
أحسن الله إليكم صاحب الفضيلة. هذا سائل يقول: هل الرجوع إلى العلماء أصل من أصول أهل السنة؟
الله جل وعلا يقول: فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ask the people of knowledge if you don't know.
هذا أمر من الله.
This is a command from Allah.
للرجوع إلى أهل العلم.
To take the affairs back to the scholars, to Ahl al-Ilm, to the people of knowledge.
ويقول جل وعلا: وإذا جاءهم أمر من الأمن أو الخوف أذاعوا به.
In another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing the munafiqun, this is Surah An-Nisa, if an affair comes to them of security or fear, they go ahead and broadcast the announcer. That's their initial reaction.
ولو ردوه إلى الرسول وإلى أولي الأمر منهم.
Had they taken it back to the Messenger of Rasulullah who was alive at that time, all those people who are the Ulil Amr, meaning the people of ilm, the people of authority,
فعلمه الذين يستنبطونه.
They would know those people who can make the istinbat, meaning make the ijtihad, meaning able to deduce what should be the right response.
الرجوع إلى أهل العلم واجب.
Therefore, returning the affair back to the people of ilm is wajib.
ولا يجوز للجهال والعوام والمبتدئين.
It's not permissible to take the affairs to the juhal, to the ignorant people, to the lay people, to those people who are just beginning in seeking of ilm.
أن يقتصروا على فهمهم أو على.
And that we go to these people. Some of these people, they have some knowledge, but they're not scholars. And they are there at the forefront of speaking. And the Shaykh is saying here, this is not the approach.
يجب عليهم أن يرجعوا إلى.
It's wajib for them to go back to Ahl al-Ilm
يسألوهم
and ask them.
أشكل عليهم.
If there's anything that is troubling them, you turn it back to them.
نعم.
So that's the answer from that question. Yeah. Now, the Shaykh hasn't said in explicit terms that, is it an asl from the usul, meaning is it part of our manhaj, is it part of our aqidah? But if you go back to the books of the salaf, the books of hadith even, you will see that there is a reference to it being part of your methodology. Okay? So the Shaykh hasn't said it in those words, but it won't be far-fetched to say that, okay, our approach is to go back to Ahl al-Ilm, and that's what makes us Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Now, the Shaykh has been asked a number of questions, Sheikh Salih al-Fawzan again, about what is happening in Gaza. Okay, so there's about 3 or 4 questions, and some of them are repeated. I think I'm going to play the first 3 because each answer to them is a little bit different, and he mentions benefits in each one of them that we can take away from any kind of fitna that occurs in the Muslim Ummah. So it could be Trump today, it could be Dajjal tomorrow. Let's listen.
يقول: ما هو واجب المسلمون تجاه ما يجري في فلسطين.
So what's happening in Palestine? What's happening in Gaza? What is our obligation towards them?
تجاه اليهود عليهم لعنة الله.
And against the Yahud who are causing all this corruption, may Allah deal with them in a manner that befits them.
على المسلمين أن يصلحوا أنفسهم.
Number 1, the Muslims, what is wajib upon them is for them to rectify themselves.
قبل كل شيء.
Before anything else.
يصلحوا أنفسهم ويتوبوا إلى الله.
Rectify yourself, make tawbah to Allah.
ويرجعوا إلى دينهم.
And go back to your religion.
ويحكموا شريعة.
And establish the sharia of Allah subhanahu in yourself.
ربهم. فإذا أصلحوا.
And in your lands, in everywhere that you can possibly establish it.
أنفسهم وتهيأوا لقتال العدو فإن الله ينصرهم على عدوه.
If they rectify themselves, then they now are in a position to face the enemy, because they have brought that betterment upon themselves.
أما ما داموا في أنفسهم غير صالحين
But if they remain in a state where they are not pious,
فلن يستطيعوا أن يقاوموا أحدا.
then there's no way that they're able to repel anyone.
ويسلط الله عليهم الأعداء بسبب تغييرهم لدينهم.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make their enemies superior to them because of the fact that they have turned away from their religion.
نعم.
That's the first question. Second question.
جزاكم الله خيرا. هذا سائل يقول: ما نصيحتك للمسلمين في ظل هذه الأوضاع التي تعيشها فلسطين، وما هو العمل الذي يجب أن يفعله المسلمون؟
Okay, so similar question. What is our response to what's happening in Palestine? Palestine, very important word. We're going to see what he says about that. And what is obligatory? What should we be doing as Muslims? Right?
العمل الذي يجب أن يفعله المسلمون
What is wajib upon the Muslim for him to establish
إخوانهم المظلومين والمضطهدين
for his brothers who are being oppressed everywhere. Look what he says.
ولكن في فلسطين أشد.
He should have this obligation to Muslims everywhere. Yes, Palestine is worse, but this is his obligation to Muslims everywhere. Now this is very important as well. I mean, like we have said before, we make dua day and night, and we are waiting for the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his support, that he brings about justice and he brings about security for our brothers in Sham. The Messenger of Allah made so much dua for the people of Sham. But the Shaykh has highlighted on a very important point here, which is Muslims are being oppressed everywhere. So why do we have this disparity? It's very important. The Shaykh is saying this is wajib upon all of us to be concerned about what is happening to the Muslim Ummah, irrespective of where they are, or what their gender is, or what their nationality is, or what their ethnicity is, etc. So now, what do we do in a situation where you got this guy coming out and say, we're going to take Gaza, or we're going to do this and we're going to do that? In a position of inability, you do what you are able to do. So the Shaykh is basically alluding to here now, dua. Dua is your greatest thing. A lot of people will say, oh, you're just asking us to make dua. Dua is immense. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is our Mawla. وَلَا مَوْلَى لَهُمْ, and they have no Mawla. If we listen to what the Shaykh has said in the first one and we act upon that, and then you make dua, are you telling me that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not respond to your dua? So the Shaykh is saying here, right, what we need to do now, is our obligation to support them. What is within our means? Number one, dua. Now, this is, again, very sad and unfortunate. A lot of people talk about politics and engage in politics, and they spend more time talking than actually worshipping. There's so much that you can do as an act of worship, which will bring about goodness for yourself and for your brothers, wherever they may be. But people would rather sit and talk and search social media for themselves, unfortunately. So make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them the nusrah, that stability and that victory and that alleviation against the enemies who are oppressing them. And helping them with sadaqah. Again, here we are talking about what is within your means. Sadaqah, food, clothing, whatever else it might be. Because they need you. They need your help. There's families, there's elderly, there are children. Poor and needy, help them. And make dua. That is what is within your means. Okay? So now the second response would be, if anything happens to the Muslim Ummah, whatever the situation is, wherever the situation is, the Shaykh has said here, number one, return back this affair to yourself. Look at yourself, make tawbah and return back to your religion. If you do this collectively, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased with you. As a ummah, as individuals, as a ummah. The second thing is, you do what is within your capability, and you cannot undermine taking the means as well as having tawakkul. If a person was to say, oh, you're telling people to make dua, but you're not telling them to make jihad, we will say you are undermining tawakkul and the concept of tawakkul in our aqidah. Because taking the means is part of tawakkul. If a person doesn't have the means and he's trying to stretch these means, which are not a means, then he has failed in his understanding of tawakkul. Third question.
أحسن الله إليكم صاحب الفضيلة، وهذه أسئلة عديدة جاءت تسأل عن موقفنا مما
A number of questions asking about our position as to what's happening in Gaza.
يحصل لإخواننا في فلسطين، وما هو الواجب علينا تجاههم.
الواجب عليكم ما تقدرون
Do what you're able to do.
من المساعدة بالمال والدعاء، هذا هو الواجب
Dua, etc.
عليكم. المساعدة بالمال وباب التبرع مفتوح لهم وميسر لكم، تبرعوا لهم. وكذلك الدعاء للمسلمين، الدعاء للمسلمين، ما هو تقول الفلسطينيين.
This is what I was waiting for from this one here. The Sheikh is saying here, your response to what is happening in Gaza or anywhere else is a response of Iman. It's not a response of politics. It's not a response of social pressure. It's not an ethical response. Those things are subsidiary to what the Sheikh is saying here. We are concerned for them. We make dua for them. We try and support them because they are our brothers, irrespective of whether they're Palestinian or they're from Rohingya or whether they're from Yemen or they're from Syria or they're from Congo or wherever else it might be.
تقول للمسلمين.
For the Muslims. It's an issue of Iman.
لإخواننا المسلمين بالنصر والتأييد نعم.
So this is my advice. People have asked me about what we should be saying, what we should be doing, and obviously we all have our own personal thoughts and views, but as we have seen from this one here, it is from our aqidah and our manhaj that you take the affairs back to ulil amr. فردوا إلى الله ورسوله إن كنتم تؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر ذلك خير وأحسن تأويل. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, take it back to Allah and His Messenger. If you believe in the last day, this is the best interpretation, meaning this is the best outcome. And you have heard what the Shaykh has said from the different ayat, and there are many hadith which command this also. Therefore, it is upon us to do what we are able to do with dua, with support, with tawakkul, with having hope and fear in Allah, with rectifying ourselves, with making... There's plenty that we can get on with. But also now we are seeing something here which is we are being tested with, is the test of patience. And what I mean by patience here is on the aqdar Allah al-mu'limah, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed, which is going to be harmful, the good of it and the bad of it, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed. But also you are being now tested in the ta'a and ma'siyah. Meaning, are you now going to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in what your religion has told you to do, or are you now going to end up following your whims and your desires and your opinions and the social pressures and the different things that we have mentioned before? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told you to go back to Ahl al-Ilm. Are you going to do that or not? Is your response going to be in conformance in the way that you're being tested with? We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us of those who hear and follow the best way. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes easy the affairs of the Muslim ummah, wherever they may be, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a return to His religion with the best of returning. هذا والله أعلم.